Let's talk about a guy whose name is basically a synonym for failure. Herbert Hoover, the 31st president. What if I told you he was actually one of the most capable people to ever hold that office? His story is this incredible collision between a brilliant man and a catastrophic moment in history. And it really forces you to question the simple version of events we all think we know.
I mean, seriously, when you hear the name Hoover, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For almost everyone, it's the Great Depression. You think of Hoovervilles, those shanty towns. The popular story is that he's the president who just sat back and did nothing while the country completely collapsed. It's a really powerful, simple image.
But is that the whole picture? Not even close. The myth is simple, failed president. The reality, though? Oh, it's so much more complex. This is the story of a man with immense talent who ran headfirst into a disaster bigger than anyone could have imagined.
To really get who this guy was, we have to rewind the clock. Because before the White House, Herbert Hoover wasn't just a politician, he was a global hero. Yeah, you heard that right. His resume before he ever got into politics was just staggering. We're talking about a world-renowned engineer, a master organizer. But it was his work leading food aid programs in Europe during World War I that made him a global icon. It earned him the nickname, the Great Humanitarian. And this is key. He was celebrated for literally saving millions of people from starvation.
So, with a reputation like that, is it any surprise that when he ran for president in 1928, he didn't just win, he won in an absolute landslide? The whole country saw him as this ultimate can-do problem solver, the perfect person to lead a booming nation into an even brighter future. The confidence in him was just off the charts.
And you know what? He believed it too. This quote just captures the whole optimistic vibe of the era. Hoover genuinely thought that with American ingenuity, the qualities he himself had in spades, the country was on the verge of wiping out poverty for good. It's a breathtaking thing to say, especially when you know what was right around the corner. Just 7 months. That's it. That's how long all that optimism lasted once he was in office. 7 months before that whole dream of endless prosperity came crashing down. Hard. The stock market crash in October 1929 was just the first domino. It set off this catastrophic chain reaction. Banks started failing, businesses were closing up shop, international trade just seized up, and by 1932, unemployment had skyrocketed to nearly 25%. That's 1 in every 4 people out of a job. Now, the crisis wasn't his fault, but it was absolutely his to solve. So, how does a man like Hoover, this brilliant organizer, this humanitarian, respond to a crisis on this scale? Well, the answer lies in his core philosophy, the very principles that had guided his entire life.
Everything about Hoover's response really comes down to this core belief in rugged individualism. He was totally convinced that the American spirit was built on self-reliance and local communities helping each other out. In his mind, help should come from charities and states, not from a massive federal government. And this wasn't about him lacking compassion. It was a fundamental principle about what the government should and shouldn't do.
And you can see his whole approach right here. He wasn't idle. Step 1 was about stabilizing the top. He created the Reconstruction Finance Corporation to loan money to banks and railroads. Step 2 was about building. He backed huge public works projects like the Hoover Dam to create jobs. But Step 3 was crucial. He held the line, refusing to give direct federal aid to people, instead encouraging local communities to pick up the slack.
The problem was, this wasn't a normal recession. The scale of this collapse was bigger than anything anyone had ever seen. And Hoover's principled, logical response, well, it was like trying to fight an economic hurricane with an umbrella. It was just no match.
This really shows you the gap between what he intended, what actually happened. The RFC was supposed to stabilize the whole economy, but to the public, it just looked like a bailout for Wall Street, not for them. The Smoot-Hawley tariff was meant to protect American jobs, but what it actually did was spark a global trade war that made the Depression so much worse. And his idea of relying on local relief? The charities were simply overwhelmed, leaving millions of desperate families with no help at all. And then you get to the breaking point. In 1932, thousands of World War I veterans, now completely broke, marched on Washington. They called themselves the Bonus Army. They set up camps, and they demanded early payment of a wartime bonus they'd been promised. It was a powder keg of desperation just waiting to go off. And the result was a complete catastrophe. The U.S. Army, acting under Hoover's command, was sent in to clear them out. And the images of American soldiers using tear gas on American veterans were everywhere. For the great humanitarian, this was an unforgivable stain. It completely sealed his political fate.
So, Hoover lost the 1932 election in a landslide and left office as one of America's most unpopular presidents ever. But, history's final judgment is rarely that simple. With time, a more nuanced view of his legacy has started to take shape.
The modern view isn't that Hoover was a bad man. It's that he was a good man who brought the wrong tools for the job. His principles became a kind of straitjacket right when the country needed radical, out-of-the-box thinking. Ironically, some of his ideas, like the RFC, actually became the building blocks for the New Deal that followed him. Ultimately, his presidency is this powerful lesson. The same principles that build a great career can, in a true crisis, lead to a tragic failure.
And Hoover's story leaves us with this timeless question. He stuck to his principles while the country was collapsing around him. And it forces us to ask, in a crisis, what's more important for a leader? Sticking to your principles or being pragmatic enough to do whatever it takes?